Welcome back. This is part 2 of our deep dive into modern Indian history.
Yeah.
It's especially relevant if you're prepping for the UPSC GS1 paper,
Right.
But anyone who finds this era fascinating, is welcome to join us.
Absolutely.
So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like the show if you're enjoying these dives.
Yes, please.
Today, we're going beyond the usual, the political and social reformers and all that.
Yeah.
And looking at a figure who really shaped India's spiritual and cultural landscape. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. He may not have been in the thick of political stuff, but his influence on people, like Swami Vivekananda, wow. Talk about taking spiritual energy global. You can't understand 19th century India without understanding Ramakrishna.
All right, so let's get into it.
Yeah.
Born in 1836 in West Bengal to a devout Hindu family. But even as a kid, he was drawn to spirituality. Like he just had this sense of something bigger. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you have to remember the context.
All right.
19th century Bengal was like this, this boiling pot of new ideas, reform movements. People searching for, meaning Ramakrishna's early interest in spirituality wasn't actually that unusual.
So he wasn't just content with the Hinduism of his upbringing.
No, not at all.
He explored other faiths too, like Islam and Christianity.
Oh, absolutely. He delved into them with the same kind of passion that he approached Hinduism. It's pretty amazing, actually, the audacity to embrace such different paths, especially back then.
Yeah, think about it. A society often so divided along religious lines.
Right.
And he's going across those boundaries.
It was really remarkable.
I'm curious about how he navigated all those different paths.
So his journey involved really intense spiritual practices, what's called sadhana.
Sadhana.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit for people who might not be familiar with the term?
Sure. Sadhana basically refers to the disciplined practices that someone undertakes on a spiritual path. So it could be meditation, chanting rituals, selfless service study, anything aimed at, purifying the mind and heart, and ultimately realizing one's true nature.
So it's not just like an intellectual exploration.
Right.
He's actually doing these practices.
Exactly, to experience the truth of each path.
So what stands out to you in his journey toward enlightenment?
I'd say while he had these profound experiences with many different faiths, his most significant awakening was actually connected to the Hindu goddess Kali, the Divine Mother.
Okay, Kali. Now, for someone who maybe needs a refresher on Hindu mythology, can you tell us a bit more about her and her significance for Ramakrishna?
Sure. Kali is a fascinating figure, very complex and powerful. She represents this ultimate reality encompassing both creation and destruction.
Wow.
She's often depicted as fierce, but also maternal,
Interesting.
kind of embodying this paradox that's central to how Ramakrishna understood the divine.
So this connection with Kali was kind of a turning point for him.
Yeah. It led him to the core of his teachings, the realization that all religions are basically different paths leading to the same ultimate truth.
That's a big idea.
Yeah.
Especially in 19th century India.
Right.
I wonder how people responded to this message of unity.
Ramakrishna's message really resonated, especially in 19th century Bengal. You had all this religious and social change happening,
Yeah.
and a lot of people were drawn to this idea of harmony. Amidst all the different beliefs.
Yeah, it's not like he was saying, get rid of all the differences. It's more like recognizing a shared essence beneath them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's that famous saying of his Jado Mat Tato path, which means as many faiths, so many paths.
I love that. It's like you're saying a kind of spiritual democracy.
Yeah, right. His teaching was pretty revolutionary for the time, saying all these different religious approaches are valid.
Spiritual democracy. I like that phrase.
Yeah.
So how did this idea of embracing diversity play out in his own life? Did he actually live this way?
He did. He walked the talk. Ramakrishna wasn't into empty rituals or dogma, He emphasized experiencing God directly, not just intellectually understanding him.
This feels pretty radical.
Yeah.
How did this compare to, the prevailing religious practices of that time?
Well, a lot of the practices back then focus on external rituals and following strict doctrines,
Yeah.
But Ramakrishna was all about inner transformation. This cultivating a heart full of love and devotion. He believed that true knowledge came from direct experience, from feeling the presence of the divine within yourself and in all creation.
So it's not just following rules or performing rituals.
Right.
It's about cultivating a deep inner connection.
Exactly.
That makes sense. That raises the question then, how did he guide his followers towards this direct experience? Were there specific methods or practices?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And here's where we see how deeply he understood human nature. He recognized that people are different. We all have our own unique temperaments and inclinations. So he taught a variety of paths, what we call yogas, suited to those individual differences, but all leading to that same goal, union with the divine.
So it wasn't a one-size-fits-all approach.
No, not at all.
It's like he had this spiritual toolbox.
Yeah,
You can pick the tools that resonate with you and use them to create your own path.
exactly. But no matter what the path, the key ingredient, he said, was sincerity. It's not about blindly following rules, but approaching your practice with genuine yearning, a heart full of love and devotion.
It's not about the form, it's about the feeling, the inner intention.
That's it. He believed that a pure heart full of love and devotion, it's like a magnet,
It's,
drawing divine grace. It's not just about reaching God, but about letting God reach you.
I'm curious to know, did his teachings attract a following? Like, did people gather around him?
They did. And this is where we see the seeds of his legacy being sown. People from all walks of life, scholars, villagers, drawn to his wisdom, his compassion, his ability to connect on that deep spiritual level. And among his followers was a young man who would become his most prominent disciple, Swami Vivekananda.
Vivekananda. We'll definitely have to do a deep dive on him sometime. But can you give us a little preview? Like, what was his connection with Ramakrishna, and how did he carry forward his guru's message?
Okay, so Vivekananda was this brilliant young man, kind of skeptical at first, of Ramakrishna's teachings. They seemed so simple, but he was really captivated by Ramakrishna's genuineness and the depth of his spiritual experiences. So he became Ramakrishna's most devoted disciple and took that message of universalism and practical spirituality, not just across India, but to the whole world.
Wow, so Vivekananda really amplified Ramakrishna's message.
He did.
Made it relevant on a global scale.
And I think that speaks to the universality of Ramakrishna's teachings. You know how they
Yeah.
transcend cultural and geographical boundaries?
This has been so fascinating. We've talked about his life, his teachings, his influence on people like Vivekananda. But what about his lasting impact? What happened after he passed away in 1886? Did his teachings just fade? Or did something more enduring emerge?
Ramakrishna's legacy. Oh, it definitely didn't fade. It actually flourished after he passed away. His disciples, led by Vivekananda, they established the Ramakrishna Math and Mission.
So the mission was a way to institutionalize his legacy, I guess.
Yeah.
What were their main goals?
Okay, so the Ramakrishna Mission, it basically evolved into this monastic order dedicated to serving humanity. They didn't retreat from the world, they actively engaged with it, putting those teachings of Ramakrishna about love and compassion into action.
It's really cool how the mission reflects his emphasis on direct experience.
Right.
It wasn't just about spreading his words, it was about embodying his principles through service.
Exactly. They set up all these centers, not just in India, but globally, offering spiritual guidance, education, healthcare, humanitarian aid. I mean, their work is a real example of how you can apply Ramakrishna's teachings in a practical way.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Seems like his message of unity and direct spiritual experience is still very much alive today.
Oh, it is. But I think to really understand the power of his message, we need to go a little deeper into his core spiritual philosophy.
Yeah, okay, so we talked about Ramakrishna's experiences with different faiths and his realization that all paths lead to the same truth. But what exactly did he believe about the nature of that ultimate truth? Did he have a specific name or concept for God?
Well, Ramakrishna wasn't really attached to any particular name or form for the divine. He saw the divine as limitless beyond human comprehension, but present in all creation. He used this analogy of an ocean with different religions being like rivers flowing into that same vast ocean.
That's a beautiful image. It really captures that sense of interconnectedness.
Yeah.
So it's not about believing in a certain image of God or adhering to a specific dogma. It's about recognizing that underlying unity.
That's it. He taught that the divine can be experienced in so many forms, through different names and symbols, but the essence is always the same. Pure consciousness, infinite love, boundless bliss.
Wow, that's a powerful concept.
Hmm.
It really shifts the focus from those external differences to an internal experience of unity. So how do we access this divine reality? What path did he advocate for reaching that state of unity?
He always emphasized sadhana, spiritual practice. And just like he recognized that people are different when choosing a path, he also believed in using different approaches for spiritual practice.
So there wasn't just one method for everyone.
Right, different paths suited to individual temperaments and inclinations, but all leading to the same goal, realizing this deeper reality.
Can you give us some examples of these different approaches?
Okay, so he taught about bhakti yoga, the path of devotion, expressing love for the divine through prayer chanting rituals. And for those who are more action-oriented, he advocated karma yoga, dedicating your actions to a higher purpose, seeing work as an offering to the divine. And then there's jnana yoga for those drawn to knowledge and contemplation, seeking understanding through study, meditation, introspection.
It's really a holistic approach to spirituality, isn't it?
Yes.
Catering to all these different needs and inclinations.
Exactly. And he often emphasized that no matter what path you choose, the key is sincerity. It's not about blindly following rituals or dogmas. It's about approaching your practice with this genuine yearning, with a heart full of love and devotion.
That makes me think of what we talked about earlier, his emphasis on bhakti, on cultivating a loving relationship with the divine. But how do we actually cultivate that love? It's easy to say love God, but what does that really look like in practice?
Well, for Ramakrishna Bhakti, it was more than just an emotion. It was a way of life. It meant seeing the divine in everything, treating all beings with kindness and compassion, offering your actions, your thoughts, your feelings to a higher purpose, dedicating your life to the service of the divine.
It's about living with a sense of the sacred, transforming even the mundane into acts of devotion.
Yeah.
It's about action, not just words.
You got it. He believed that true bhakti, it transforms us. It makes us more loving, compassionate, selfless. He often said, if you want to find God, serve man. This idea of service being a direct path to the divine is really central to his teachings.
It's powerful that by serving others, we're serving the divine.
Yeah.
It makes spirituality feel much more grounded.
And that was a key part of his message, bringing spirituality into everyday life. He didn't say renounce the world. He said find the divine within it, in every interaction, in every act of service.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
It makes spirituality feel so much more accessible, something we can all integrate into our lives, no matter what our background or beliefs.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think that's one of the most important takeaways. Ramakrishna showed us that spirituality isn't just in temples or scriptures. It's a living experience that can be found in the heart of every human being.
I love that. He reminds us that the divine isn't distant or unattainable. It's a living presence within us, waiting to be discovered through love service and a sincere yearning for truth.
And for those preparing for the UPSC exams, Ramakrishna's life and teachings, they're a valuable case study for understanding the socio-religious landscape of 19th century India. His emphasis on unity and tolerance amidst diversity, it's a powerful message for building a harmonious society, which really resonates with the ideals in our Constitution.
Absolutely. And for anyone who's just interested in exploring Indian spiritual tradition, Ramakrishna's story is so inspiring and enlightening. It shows us that the path to the divine, it's paved with compassion, service, and a deep love for humanity.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the life and teachings of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. We hope you found it insightful.
Don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more explorations of history, spirituality, and the human experience. Until next time, may the peace and wisdom of Sri Ramakrishna be with you all.